Global cost of the Iran war revealed. Billions of dollars vanished in energy losses in just 50 days, with no clear end in sight. Around $50 billion have been wiped away from the global oil market due to Trump and Bibi's war, raising questions over who will pay the long-term price. With nearly 500 million barrels of crude oil knocked out of supply, is the world staring at an energy shock whose impact could last for years? America's Arab friends were left fuming after losing about 8 million barrels of oil every single day of the war. Nearly 50 days into the Iran war, the global energy market has taken a major hit, reports say, with the scale of disruption now visible in both prices and physical supply losses. The world's energy market has effectively lost more than $50 billion worth of crude oil that was never produced, as fields, pipelines, and export terminals remain offline. Analysts have warned that the impact could last for months, if not years, as damage, insurance risks, and shipping disruptions slow any meaningful recovery. Over 500 million barrels of crude and condensate have been knocked out of the market, according to data firm Kepler, reflecting cancelled output and blocked exports over this period. This is the biggest energy supply disruption recorded in modern history, as per reports, exceeding previous shocks linked to wars, embargoes, and infrastructure failures. The missing 500 million barrels are equivalent to nearly a month of oil demand in the United States, underscoring the scale of the shortfall against normal consumption. It is also comparable to 6 years of fuel used by the US military and more than a month of total oil demand across Europe, highlighting the strategic impact of the lost barrels. Gulf producers lost around 8 million barrels per day of crude production in March, according to Reuters-based estimates, as facilities were shut or constrained by the conflict. This roughly matches the combined output of ExxonMobil and Chevron, putting the regional disruption on par with shutting down two of the world's largest oil companies. The Gulf's jet fuel exports fell from 19.6 million barrels in February to just 4.1 million barrels in March and April, severely tightening supplies for global aviation. Full restoration of regional energy infrastructure could take years due to damage to refineries and key hubs such as Ras Laffan, where repairs, security upgrades, and financing will take time. Global onshore crude inventories have already fallen by around 45 million barrels in April, according to industry reports, as stockpiles are drawn down to cover the lost supply. Meanwhile, production outages have averaged roughly 12 million barrels per day since late March, reports indicate, combining losses from Iran, the Gulf, and related knock-on disruptions. Donald Trump has pulled his war cabinet into an urgent huddle just as Iran shuts the Strait of Hormuz again, sharply raising the stakes for both diplomacy and conflict. On April 18th, he reportedly convened an emergency situation room meeting specifically to respond to Iran's surprise decision to reimpose restrictions on the waterway. Senior figures including Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Chief Pete Hegseth, and the CIA Director John Ratcliffe were among those called in, highlighting how serious the moment is. Trump's inner circle confidants like Scott Bessant, Susie Wilkes, along with Joint Chiefs Chair Dan Kane, were also reportedly at the table. One U.S. official has already warned that if no breakthrough comes soon, the war could resume within days, underscoring how fragile the current pause really is. The crisis session lands just days before the current US-Iran ceasefire is due to expire on April 22nd, adding extra pressure to decide whether to extend talks or restart strikes. Reports also say Iran has privately warned it could resume missile fire on Israel if the new ceasefire in Lebanon breaks down or is not carried into a longer-term deal. A 10-day Israel-Hezbollah truce started on April 18th, yet Israeli officials have already labeled it temporary, hinting they still see unfinished business in the north. On the same day, Iran abruptly reversed its earlier reopening and slapped new restrictions back on the Strait of Hormuz, reigniting fears over critical oil choke point. The step came directly after Washington chose to keep its naval blockade on Iran-linked shipping in place, even as Tehran briefly relaxed its own controls. Maritime sources say vessels have been warned against passing through the narrow strait without clearance, injecting fresh uncertainty into global shipping routes. Iran insists that ultimate control over Hormuz remains with its forces, framing the current standoff as a test of its sovereignty at sea. Trump has publicly shrugged off the closure as cute, insisting talks with Tehran are going well even as his own military planners quietly model worst-case scenarios.
And we'll be talking about Iran later. We have very good conversations going on. It's working out very well. They got a little cute, as they have been doing for 47 years. Nobody ever took them on. We took them on. They have no Navy. They have no Air Force. They have no leaders. They have no nothing. Actually, their leaders it is regime change. You call that enforced regime change, but we're talking to them. They wanted to close up the strait again, as they've been doing for years, and they can't blackmail us. In fact, a lot of the ships are coming up to Texas. I don't know if you know, in Louisiana, the ships are coming up. They got used to it. Maybe they'll keep doing it. It's worked out pretty good. But it's going actually along very well, and we'll see. But we'll have some information by the end of the day. We're talking to them. And, we're taking a tough stand. They've killed a lot of people. A lot of our people have been killed. A lot of your fellow soldiers have been killed over the years by Iran. The roadside bomb. Soleimani, I killed Soleimani.
Thank you for that. He was making the explosive form penetrators. They were making them in Iran, bringing them to Iraq and blasting through the vehicles.
Well, he was the father of the roadside bomb, essentially, and he killed a lot of people. And when you see soldiers or others, but soldiers generally walking around with no legs, with no arms, a face that's been smashed, that was Soleimani, that was Iran that did that. So we have a much different view on it than other presidents. They've gotten away with murder for 47 years. They're not getting away with it anymore.
At the very same time, Iran's supreme leader has promised fresh defeats for both the US and Israel at sea if they miscalculate. Mujtaba Khamenei says Iran's navy stands ready to inflict new bitter defeats on its enemies, framing Hormuz as a battlefield where past drone strikes are only a taste of what's possible.
The Iranian army, standing in dense, steadfast ranks, shoulder to shoulder with other fighters and armed forces, has grappled with the two main armies of the Arrogance Front and has exposed their weakness and humiliation before the world. Just as the army's drones hit American and Zionist criminals like lightning, its brave navy stands ready to make its enemies taste the bitterness of new defeats.
Despite active back channels, no firm date has been set for the next formal round of US-Iran talks, leaving the diplomatic track in a holding pattern. Washington insists negotiations are continuing, but officials admit that no final deal has been reached and key issues remain unresolved. With Hormuz effectively shut again, global shipping and oil markets now face a fresh wave of uncertainty, all while the ceasefire end date, and the risk of renewed war, draws ever closer.